There's one thing that destroys every CVT transmission ever built inside a Hyundai, a Kia, a Chevrolet, and a Mitsubishi. Not two things, not a list of possibilities, one thing. And it costs less than $40 to stop it forever. Not a repair, not a part, not a mechanic appointment. $40 done in your own driveway, and the transmission that was about to cost you $6,000 starts behaving like it did the day you drove it off the lot. You have probably already felt it. That shudder at low speed, that hesitation when you press the gas, that weird slipping feeling like the car can't make up its mind. You felt it, and you took it in, and someone handed you a number with 4 digits on it and looked you dead in the eye and told you the transmission was just worn out. They were not wrong, but they were not honest either, because what wore it out was not age, it was not mileage, it was not bad luck. It was one single decision, made at the factory, reinforced by every service schedule you were ever handed, and the people who handed you that schedule knew exactly what it was going to cost you down the road. Stay here, because what comes next is the part that makes every dealership service manager deeply uncomfortable. CVT transmissions have a reputation. You have heard it. People say they are fragile. People say they are expensive. People say they are the design flaw nobody will admit to. And if you own one of these cars, you have probably started to wonder if you made a mistake. You did not make a mistake. The transmission in your car is not a bad transmission. It is actually an engineering achievement. It is smooth. It is efficient. It gets you better fuel economy than almost any geared automatic ever built. The problem is not the transmission. The problem is what happens to it when it is left alone with the fluid it came with from the factory. And that is the part nobody ever printed in your owner's manual. What happened in Japan with the fleet operators who figured this out first, and what they did differently that kept their transmissions running past 300,000 miles, is coming up in about 60 seconds. First, you need to understand the scale of what you are sitting inside. The CVT transmission market, replacements, repairs, diagnostics, generates billions of dollars every single year across North America alone. The average CVT replacement runs between $4,000 and $8,000, depending on your make and model. The average failure happens between 80,000 and 120,000 miles. And every manufacturer whose name is on that transmission knows the exact mileage window. It is not a secret inside the industry. It is a business model. The fluid interval that appears in your owner's manual, if it appears at all, was not written by an engineer who wanted your transmission to last. It was written by a team that understood exactly how much life a specific interval would allow, and they allowed just enough, barely enough, just enough to get you past the warranty and close enough to the failure window to make the replacement feel inevitable. The science behind why this works the way it does is even more damaging to their argument than the story of how the interval got set in the first place. That is what comes next. There's a fleet operator in Osaka who has been running a delivery service since the early 2000s. His company runs 23 vehicles. Every single one of them has a CVT. He has never replaced a single transmission, not one. His vehicles are north of 250,000 miles, and his mechanics are not performing miracles. They are doing one thing on a schedule that takes less than an hour per vehicle and costs almost nothing. The rest of his fleet just runs. He found out about this from a driver who had worked for a Japanese taxi company in the 90s, a company that learned through painful experience that the factory fluid interval was not a maintenance recommendation. It was a countdown timer. Once they changed the interval, the failures stopped completely. The reason this works is something you can understand in about 2 minutes. Stay with me. Here is what is actually happening inside your CVT right now. The transmission works by using 2 metal cones and a steel belt, or a chain, depending on your specific model. The belt moves between those cones continuously, changing the ratio as the car accelerates. It is the reason you do not feel gear shifts. It is constantly adjusting. Thousands of tiny adjustments every single minute you're driving. Now think about what that means for the fluid. Think about your kitchen blender, the one you use for smoothies. If you put sand in that blender and ran it for an hour, the blade would grind that sand into the fluid. The fluid would get thick, it would get dirty, it would stop lubricating and start abrading. That is exactly what happens to CVT fluid. The metal belt and the metal cones are in constant contact. They shed microscopic particles. Those particles go into the fluid. The fluid becomes a very mild, very slow grinding paste, and it grinds every mile, every day. The fluid that was clear and clean when it left the factory turns into something that accelerates wear instead of preventing it. The expensive fluid your dealership sells you and the filter your mechanic charges you to replace, they are not magic. They are not special. They do one thing. They dilute the contamination. They replace the degraded fluid with fresh fluid that can actually lubricate instead of grind. It is almost insultingly simple. The fluid gets dirty, you replace it. The transmission stops grinding itself to death. That is the entire secret. The reason your CVT shudders, slips, hesitates, and eventually fails is because the fluid inside it has crossed a threshold where it is doing more damage than protection. And the threshold that your owner's manual sends you past, intentionally or not, is precisely the threshold that guarantees a degraded transmission. Most people who try to fix this get one step wrong, and it is the very first step. It is not the product. It is not the amount. It is a decision they make before they ever touch the car. That mistake turns a simple fix into an accelerated failure. That is coming up right now. What the dealership has been charging you for, every single transmission, flush at $250, recommended every 60,000 miles, is the same thing. The same fluid replacement you can do yourself for $30 to $40 in parts, in your driveway, in 45 minutes. They know this. Every service writer who handed you that invoice knew this. They did not lie to you about the service. The service is real. The fluid change is genuinely necessary. What they did not tell you is that 60,000 miles is already too long. By the time you hit 60,000 miles on factory CVT fluid, the degradation has already started compounding. The damage is already accumulating. The flush at 60,000 stops the bleeding, but it does not undo the grinding that already happened. The fleet operator in Osaka does not wait for 60,000 miles. He never has, and his transmissions keep running while yours gets scheduled for replacement. The number he uses, the actual interval that makes the difference, is coming in the practical section. Pay close attention to what comes next, because this is the step most people skip, and it is the only one that makes everything else permanent. Here is exactly what to do, and I want you to notice how simple this is. The first thing you need is the right fluid. Now, this is the step that most people get wrong, and it is the one that can turn a healthy maintenance job into an accelerated failure if you miss it. CVT fluid is not universal. A Hyundai CVT, a Nissan CVT, a Mitsubishi CVT, a Chevrolet CVT, they each have a specific fluid specification. The fluid matters, not because of brand loyalty or dealer upselling, because CVT belts and clutch packs are tuned to a specific fluid viscosity and friction coefficient. Put the wrong fluid in, and you do not get a small downgrade. You get accelerated wear, you get shudder, you get exactly the symptoms you were trying to fix. So the first step, before you buy anything, before you touch the car, is to look up your exact make, model, and year and find the manufacturer's fluid specification code. It will look something like SP3 or NS3 or CVTF4. Write it down. That code is what you are buying, not a brand name. You can find CVT fluid at any auto parts store you already know. The big chain stores all carry it. You do not need to go to a dealership. You do not need to order anything online. Walk in, tell them the spec code, and they will hand you the right bottle. A full drain and fill on most CVT transmissions takes between 4 and 6 quarts. A quart of the correct fluid runs between $8 and $12 depending on your region. So the total fluid cost is somewhere between $30 and $50. That is your entire parts bill. Total cost, under $50. Total time, 45 minutes, no mechanic, no appointment, no $4,000 replacement conversation. Now the interval. This is the part that actually changes everything. The factory interval in your owner's manual, if there even is one, because some manufacturers list CVT fluid as lifetime fluid, which is one of the most expensive pieces of marketing language ever printed in an automotive document. The factory interval was not written for transmission longevity. Change your CVT fluid every 30,000 miles. Not 60. Not the lifetime of the car. Every 30,000 miles. If you have never changed it, and your car has more than 30,000 miles on it, do it now. Today. This week at the latest. If you have more than 60,000 miles on original fluid, do not skip a change because you think the damage is already done. Stop the bleeding first. Then stay on the 30,000 mile schedule going forward, and the transmission that was heading toward failure will stabilize. The drain and fill process itself is straightforward. You locate the drain plug on the transmission pan. Your car's specific location is a 2-minute search online, and almost every model has one. You drain the old fluid completely, you reinstall the drain plug, and you refill through the fill port until fluid just starts to run back out. That overflow method tells you the transmission is full without guessing at a measurement. Some models also have a serviceable filter. If yours does, change it when you do the fluid. The filter is typically under $15 if you're not comfortable going under the car. Any independent shop, not a dealership, an independent shop, can do this service for you for $60 to $90 in labor. You bring the fluid, you pay for the time. Total out of pocket is still under $150. Compare that to the dealership doing this service on their schedule with their fluid markup. $250 minimum, and that is before they find something else to recommend while your car is on their lift. There's a woman in Phoenix who bought a used Kia Sportage 4 years ago with 68,000 miles on it. The previous owner had never touched the CVT fluid. She started getting the shudder at low speeds about 2 months after she bought it. She took it to 2 different shops. Both told her the transmission was failing and quoted her between $4,000 and $7,000 to replace it. Instead, she spent $42 on fluid and did the drain and fill herself in her apartment parking lot. The shutter disappeared within 100 miles. Her Sportage now has 190,000 miles on it. She has done the fluid change 3 more times. She has never paid for a transmission repair. The mechanic, who quoted her $7,000, saw a car with dirty fluid and a failed maintenance history and called it a failed transmission. He was not necessarily wrong about where it was headed. He was wrong about whether it was already there. There was still time. There is probably still time for your car too. The dealership that serviced your car last year knew this existed. They just never said anything. Every time you brought your car in for an oil change and they walked you through the multi-point inspection and pointed to the transmission fluid as something to monitor, they already knew the interval that would keep it alive. They knew it was not the interval printed in your manual. They knew the difference between a customer who understood CVT maintenance and a customer who would come back in 3 years for a transmission replacement. And they made a quiet, calculated decision about which kind of customer they wanted you to stay. Your not knowing was worth thousands of dollars to them, not in a villain movie way, in a spreadsheet way, in a business model way. In the way that the most profitable outcome for a service department is a customer who trusts the manufacturer's maintenance schedule without questioning it. That is the machine you were inside. And now you're outside it. But now you know. And that puts you in exactly the same position as the fleet operator in Osaka and the woman in Phoenix and every driver who figured this out before the transmission crossed the point of no return. You do not have to play by their rules anymore. 30,000 miles, the right fluid spec for your exact car, under $50, 45 minutes. That is the entire equation. That is the only cause behind the CVT failures that are draining Hyundai owners and Kia owners and Chevy owners and Mitsubishi owners every single year. Not a design flaw, not bad luck, not inevitable wear. One ignored fluid interval, multiplied by millions of cars, generating billions of dollars in replacements that should never have happened. If this video opens something for you, share it right now. Put it in the group chat, send it to whoever you know who owns one of these cars. Every share puts this in front of someone who is still 3 months away from a $4,000 repair estimate, and a mechanic who is not going to volunteer the $40 alternative. Subscribe, because the next one covers the one maintenance item that extends the life of your CVT even further. Something that costs nothing and takes 2 minutes. And if your car has more than 50,000 miles on it, you're going to want to see that one before your next service appointment.